Hey toy fans, Aaron here. Today taking a look at the retro collection release of the Biker Scout. This figure along with the other 5 in the wave were released in March of 2023, and a quick look at the figure on the card shows you that it comes, well, basically with what we've come to expect from the retro collection line. It comes on that vintage inspired card back, still getting the white worn edges printed on the card around the sides. You got the Star Wars Return of the Jedi logo top center, Biker Scout underneath that, nice image of the Biker Scout on the speeder bike, and then of course you still get that large retro collection sticker. One notable addition for the line this time is the notation for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. You got that logo in the top left corner. And then back of the card, everything the same here as what we received for the retro collection. Top half talking about how this line is inspired by the figures from the 80s. Through the middle in that orange part, orangish red, you get a listing of the 6 figures that are available in this wave, and then lower half of the card is your legal information. Taking a look at the figure out of the packaging, and first up, it's just great to see a brand new Biker Scout figure. This was a figure that I did have as a child, and mine certainly received a lot of playtime with it. And since I do have the figure, I'm going to put them both up side by side here, and there are some noticeable differences between the two figures. Jumping out immediately is the fact that the leg stance of the new retro collection release, the legs are closer together instead of being spread apart as they were on that original 1980s figure. I have no idea why they changed that, and honestly I'm a little disappointed that they made this change, because it does take away from, I guess, the point of what this figure is supposed to be, which is a reproduction of those original figures. Now, I suppose in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's not a huge deal, but one of the reasons why I like the leg stance being open more is that when you put the original figure on the speeder bike, things worked a little bit better for it. And that comes into play with the handles of the speeder bike. As you can see, his legs spread out. Those handlebars sit on the inside of each foot or each leg. You slide this new figure on, which fits right on the speeder bike, but now the feet are in the way of the handlebars, and yeah, it kind of, they swing around and it can work. Things kind of stretch out a little bit, so, not a huge deal, but it annoys me. And then secondly, another problem is the hands of this figure, and I think that's been the case for a lot of these figures, are just much closer together. I'd say even a little more extreme in this case. So my figure really is not able to grasp onto the handlebars of the speeder bike. Also, another noticeable difference, very minor, and maybe that's due to the legs being closer together, but this new figure sits just a little bit taller than the original release. There's like a 1/10 of an inch difference between the two. And then other differences between the two are really, as I mentioned, the same as we get with all the other figures. All of the sculpted features, the details to them are just a little bit softer in the way that they appear on the figure. And I think on its own, probably not that noticeable, but when you hold the two in your hands, you can really start to see the differences. There's just a little bit more sharpness to the details within the helmet, along the forehead, the mask, certainly on that faceplate in the front. The various wrinkles and folds, very noticeable around the neck. And then even as you get to the hand, the ribbed features around the glove are just a little bit sharper detailed on that original release. Aside from that, the basics of the sculpting, the way that the armor is both sculpted and painted is pretty much the same. Obviously, this new one's a lot whiter. I don't know if it's my lighting, my eyes, whatever, but I swear sometimes on the center portion of the torso, where I'm pretty sure it's molded in white and the black is painted on, sometimes I feel like I'm seeing a pinkish hue to it, but I am staring at a lot of light, so I, at this point, don't know if I'm crazy or if it's really that way. Closer look at the helmet, as I mentioned, details look great in terms of the way the figure looks as it was meant to be done in the 80s. And as I always say, that's how I'm looking at this figure, is the representation of what was done back in that day. There's not much to really put into this helmet. It's all white, little spots of black paint in the, we'll call it the ears. The black painting in the mouth area, though, is, I don't know, it's not entirely well defined, and that could be some of the sculpting. Putting these two up side by side again, the shape to where that black was filling in seemed better defined than what we're getting here. Otherwise, though, underneath the white armor of the suit, on the shoulders and arms, black's looking great. I believe for the arms, things are molded in the black plastic, and it's the white that's painted on. There's just an ever so subtle color shift in the white between the two, and that even seemed to be the way that they did the original figure back in the 80s. Armor detailing looks just fine, and for the most part, placement of the white paint is alright. There's some areas where it kind of bleeds off and doesn't follow so crisply along the lines. Let's see, it seems noticeable on his, I guess that whatever that bicep armor piece is, on his right arm. Has a little more bleed over, whereas on his left arm, it seems pretty spot on there. So just kind of hit and miss. I even noticed that was the same way for my figure from the 80s. Chest armor looks great. Little belt or whatever with the pouches on each side around his waist or abdomen looks just fine as well. You can see some holster detailing, white straps going off to the sides of his hips. Pouches on each side of the leg. All looks pretty good. You know, right in line with how the figure looked from the 80s. And then the legs of the figure, as I mentioned, they're a little closer together this time, but otherwise things do look just fine. Black of the undersuit, some white armor sculpted in on the kneecaps, and then of course those boots being done in all white. And then I believe you have an ever so small holster with, maybe that's a gun on the side of his leg sculpted in there. Doesn't quite have the same shape to it, but I'm pretty certain that's what it's supposed to be. As far as the articulation of the figure, everything's basic here as it was back in the 80s. Head swivels all the way around. Both of your arms rotate at the shoulders. Legs come straight out, but nothing going backwards for the legs, which I'm fine with. And then for accessories, he does come with his blaster. Very identifiable as being the one that belongs to the Biker Scout. I don't have my original blaster. That is long gone, so I don't have anything to compare here. Pretty decent detailing to it. Now, as you can see, in my opinion, the way I feel anyways, he does not hold this weapon well at all. With the hand being so close, you really got to squeeze it in there and hope that it even stays. The hand really wants to keep pushing the weapon out. Certainly does not hold this weapon as well as the original figure from the 80s. So overall for me, like I said, it's great to see this figure released in the Retro Collection line for Return of the Jedi, and it was one of my favorites as a kid, so that nostalgia factor alone makes me pretty happy to get a nice, crispy, clean one. As I mentioned earlier, it does annoy me that the stance is different between the two figures. It's not a huge deal breaker, and I expect that there will be, minor variances in the figures, but to me, this is just basically a resculpt. And the hands being more closed on this figure, and making it difficult to hold that blaster is also another disappointment for me. I know that's been the story for all of these Retro Collection figures, but I still felt like I had a bit of an easier time on those other figures to keep the weapon in the hand than I was able to on this figure. So that's going to wrap this one up. As always, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this figure in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.